Awwal Sufro is a ritual practice performed in the Ismaili Muslim tariqah space, where murids compete with one another for the opportunity to symbolically present or offer the entire first, awwal, table spread, sufra, of the Jamaati's mehmani offerings to the Imam of the time, evoking love, devotion, and honoring the high station of the Imam. Mehmani is the ritual offering where the Ismaili murid symbolically hosts the Imam at his home and offers the Imam hospitality and a meal. Mehman means guest. The practice of mehmani offered to Prophet Muhammad is found in various Sunni Muslim hadith. A tailor invited the Prophet to a meal of bread and soup that the Prophet enjoyed. Abu Talha prepared a meal for the Prophet, and the Prophet invoked blessings upon it, and then many people ate from the food. Anas ibn Malik's mother prepared a gift of sweet dish for the Prophet as a gift. An obese man who could not pray invited the Prophet to his house and fed him a meal. The Prophet accepted it and prayed the duha prayer in his home. Abu Shuaib invited the Prophet for a meal prepared by his slave, who was a butcher. Having shown that the practice of mehmani was a common practice during the time of Prophet Muhammad, let us now proceed to a breakdown of the Awwal Sufro ritual as it takes place on special occasions in Jamaat Khana. The Mukhi, who represents the Imam during Jamaat Khana ceremonies, gives a volunteer murid standing at the front of the congregation the permission to start the Awwal Sufro ritual. The volunteer murid commences the bidding after announcing that Awwal Sufro is being offered in the huzur or presence of Maulana Hazir Imam. Murids in the congregation bid so that they can offer the Awwal Sufro on behalf of the entire Jamaat. After a murid has won the opportunity to symbolically present the Awwal Sufro to the Imam, he goes to the Mukhi to receive blessings. In a selfless move, the murid asks that the benefit of his offering be granted to Kul Jamaat wa Kul Ruhani, meaning the entire Jamaat and all the departed souls. After the Awwal Sufro is done, the announcement, Man Murad Sufro Kato Kanavadan, is made to give the opportunity and benefit of Awwal Sufro to the rest of the Jamaat. While many non-Ismailis and even some Ismailis think that there is something wrong with this ritual, that it is not Islamic, or that it is just a way for Ismaili murids to show off their wealth, we can look to the Quran to see that revelations were made in the time of the Prophet to guide believers to compete with one another in doing good works. One has to understand what is implicit here in making these monetary offerings to the Prophet in his time and the Imam of each time thereafter. There is no one who could know better how to put to good use these offerings than the divinely inspired and divinely ordained figure of the time. Surah 5, Ayah 48 says, "To each of you we have ordained a code of law and a way of life. If Allah had willed, He would have made you one community, but His will is to test you with what He has given each of you. So compete with one another in good works. To Allah will all return. Then He will inform you of the truth regarding your differences." Surah 57, Ayah 21 says, "And rather than competing for the things of this world, race with one another to the forgiveness from your Lord, and to a garden the vastness of which is as the vastness of heaven and earth, prepared for those who truly believe in God and His messengers. That is God's bounty, which He grants to whom He wills. God is of tremendous bounty." Surah 3, Ayah 133 says, "Be quick in the race for forgiveness from your Lord, and for a garden whose width is that of the whole of the heavens and of the earth, prepared for the righteous." Surah 2, Ayah 148 says, "Everyone turns to their own direction of prayer. So compete with one another in doing good. Wherever you are, Allah will bring you all together for judgment. Surely Allah is most capable of everything." Surah 23, Ayah 61 says, "Those who do whatever good they do with their hearts fearful, knowing that they will return to their Lord, it is they who race to do good deeds, always taking the lead." From the above several verses, it is clear that competing with one another in good works is a patently Quranic ideal, and the practice of Awwal Sufro is putting that Quranic ideal into ritualized form as appropriate for our context. It is also important to note that the Quran here is reshaping the idea of competition, especially formally organized ritual competitive games as they existed in the late antique period, the period in which Quranic revelations occurred, into one where believers compete with one another to perform good works that will be rewarded in the afterlife, instead of competing with one another to gain worldly recognition and reward in this life. This is made clear in the commentary of verse 548 by Quranic studies scholar Thomas Hoffman. The Quranic concept of an ethical context of good works, al-khairat, to be performed by the members of the monotheist communities functioned as an adaptation of the Greco-Roman tradition of the agon, for example, the ritual festive competitive games that attracted contestants from the different city-states. For example, the famous Pan-Hellenic periodos, the Olympic, Pythian, Isthmian, and Nemean games. The notion and phenomenon of the agon could resonate well with pre-Islamic Arabia's egalitarian and competitive ethos with its fairs and poetic competitions, for example, the famous fair of Ukaz, as well as its assertive and polemical poetic genres, fakhr and hijah. However, in the Quranic preaching, the pagan agon was reimagined and rewritten as a monotheist ethical contest or race between the Muslim believers, Jews, and Christians, and possibly also the Zoroastrians. The outcome of this ethical race is deferred until after death, until the advent of resurrection and judgment brought about by the one who knows best. Allahu Alam. The verse, Surah 5, Ayah 48, negotiates and proposes an equilibrium between the pagan agonistic ideals and practices of the Greco-Roman pre-Islamic world and late antiquity's promulgation of monotheist truth commitments. In doing this, the verse evokes a new ethico-Islamic agon to be internalized by the Muslim believers. Based on the above insightful commentary, we can imagine ritual competitive games sponsored by empires, where the best in various physical abilities come and compete with one another for glory, honor, and prestige in this life. What the Quran does is turn that idea upon its head by encouraging people to compete with one another in good works for reward in the next life, based on recognition that material wealth is from Allah. Aside from the Quranic context, we can find examples from the Prophet's life which showcase how believers competed with one another to offer food, shelter, and other resources to him. Here is one more example of a hadith featuring Umar ibn al-Khattab attempting to compete with Abu Bakr in offering more wealth to the Prophet. Umar ibn al-Khattab reported, "The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, ordered us to give charity, and at the time I had some wealth. I said to myself, today I will outdo Abu Bakr if ever there were a day to outdo him. I went with half of my wealth to the Prophet, and he said, 'What have you left for your family?' I said the same amount. Then Abu Bakr came with everything he had. The Prophet said, 'O Abu Bakr, what have you left for your family?' Abu Bakr said, 'Allah and his Messenger.' I said, 'By Allah, I will never do better than Abu Bakr.'" As we can see, prominent followers of Prophet Muhammad competed to perform good works. Prophet Muhammad was also frequently invited to the homes of his followers for meals. Many narrations mention the Prophet accepting such invitations and participating in meals at his followers' houses. This was not understood as followers of the Prophet showing off their wealth, but an effort to put into practice the Quranic ideal of competing with one another in good works. While it is not possible today for the Imam of the time to personally attend invitations of meals, considering he has 15 to 20 million followers in over 35 countries, Awwal Sufro and Maimani are a symbolic way for his followers to obtain the same benefit.